Hello everyone. Let me tell you something. For hundreds of years, people have been dreaming about building a tunnel under the sea to connect the United Kingdom with the European mainland. And the first, most notable individual to dream of this, perhaps not the nicest person in the world, was Napoleon. And when Napoleon wasn't plotting to seize half the countries around Europe, he came up with this idea to build a horse and cart superhighway that would run under the sea, connecting France with England, with chimneys protruding up above sea level for ventilation and staging posts for the horses. This idea never did get off the ground, and since then there had been a series of failed attempts to bore deep down under the sea to connect the two countries. But for a project of such magnitude to succeed, it really needed finance, politics, as well as engineering to all come together. And eventually, it did. Fast forward to 1994, and the first train left London Waterloo Station under the sea and into France. It was considered an engineering feat of its time. The tunnel, 50 kilometres in length, and below the sea for 75 metres. And that train service is called Eurostar. And Eurostar takes thousands of people every day under the tunnel, on trains, 18 carriages in length. And they can go pretty fast. They can go up to 320 kilometres per hour, speeding through the tunnel under the sea in just 20 minutes, and going direct to Paris, Brussels, and up to Amsterdam, and also down to the south of France, enabling people to then go and take onward connections. For business and leisure travellers alike, the impact was huge. They could travel into mainland Europe in a way they'd only dreamt of before. Eurostar wasn't just connecting tracks around Europe, it was connecting people with people and families with families. But why would someone opt to take the train over the plane? Well, there was a few reasons why the train might lead the way. Firstly, city centre to city centre. The Eurostar train will go directly from one centre to the next. So for many people, the journey time can be a lot shorter. Also, there is no airport stress. There is no moving through an airport, taxiing around the runway. So for many, it can be a much more relaxed experience and less stressful. And also, from an environmental perspective, lower carbon emission. A train will emit 80% lower carbon than an equivalent flight. And today, this service is powered by a very different industry, the internet. Nowadays, a vast majority of people will buy and organise their trip online. And so, instrumental to the success of Eurostar is all the work that goes into making it easy to buy your journey and getting your tickets. I'm Natalie, and I lead the UX team at Eurostar, and we cover all the digital touch points, the website, the app, the ticket machines at the station, and the onboard entertainment. And the questions that we ask and answer are far-reaching. How can we increase revenue? How can we encourage people to move through the booking path without dropping out? How can we encourage them to upgrade? And once they've bought their journey, how can we make sure that they organise their trips themselves, that they don't call the call centre, and that they self-serve? And we spend our time speaking to users on a regular basis. We design, we concept, we A/B, we track. But what I'm going to talk to you today about is how we have found that the small changes can have the biggest impact. When we're designing new products or designing new features in existing products, we have a parallel activity running alongside, and that is that we're always looking out for those small opportunities that can have an impact on the travel experience. Because when that works, it's great for business. And that's our guiding mantra in the UX team. And I'm going to show you a few examples of where this has happened. Manage your booking. This is the page that you come to once you've bought your journey. And from the top, you've got your booking reference number, you can get your tickets, you can check the times, and also you can change your seats for free. What we wanted to do was build out this page to help inform passengers and prepare them so that their time at the station would be much more seamless. And in order to do this, we went straight to the source. We ran a workshop with the frontline staff, and we based that workshop on one question. What are the biggest problems that you face with passengers every day? And some of the stories we heard were kind of interesting. If you can imagine the weirdest, strangest item that someone has tried to take on a Eurostar train. Well, I can tell you, it was a goldfish. Somebody tried to take their goldfish on the train, and needless to say, you can't take domestic pets on international train journeys. And this goldfish ended up being looked after in the staff briefing room for the weekend while the passenger went away. And there were also some other items that you can't take on a plane that you can take on the train, including large musical instruments and bicycles. And we learned that we needed to signpost more clearly where people have to go to drop off these items. But there was another much more serious issue that rose to the surface very quickly. And that is that people miss their trains. People miss their trains every day, sometimes by 2 minutes, sometimes by 20 minutes. But it causes a lot of stress for both the passengers and the station staff. If you can picture the scene, 3 passengers waiting for their 4th friend to go away to Brussels for the weekend. No sign of their friend Claire. So they call her up and they say, "Where are you?" To which she replies, "I'm at home." They say, "But the train is leaving in just over 30 minutes. She says, "That's fine. I'm a 15-minute walk away. That gives me 15 minutes to go through." What we were learning was that for many British people, the idea of getting on an international train is no different to a domestic train. It doesn't even compute that there may be passport and security. And it turns out this way of thinking is pretty widespread. Listen to this passenger talking about timings.
When you're kind of pre-travel, so like the day before or the day of, do you do anything like checking whether the trains are running on time, things like that, or are you more relaxed?
Quite relaxed because it's Eurostar.
Yeah.
But the thing I've forgotten, I think, was I got here with not much. Was I about half an hour before the train was leaving?
Right.
And because I hadn't read my instructions, and there was a massive queue.
Yeah.
But it moved really quickly, and we all got on the train. And I kind of hadn't expected that, and I'm not sure why. But I don't know. I just kind of.
Yeah.
She hadn't expected it, and she's not sure why. It was fascinating. We were learning something about our fellow countrymen that we had never thought about or considered before. And while that was happening, there was something else happening right at the other end of the spectrum, where people from other cultures were turning up 1-2 days before just to find out what's involved in international train travel. So the UX team had uncovered cultural differences in train travel. And also what we were learning at this time was that there were peak bulges of traffic at the station during different points of the day where everyone was just gravitating towards the same place at exactly the same time. We had an opportunity. Now, we did give people information about timings, so we had to ask ourselves, where were we going wrong? Was it that we were just not putting the information in the right part of the user journey? Maybe where we were putting it, people just weren't receptive to it. Or maybe there was just something wrong with the message itself. Or were we just not attributing enough visual weighting to the message and it just wasn't standing out? It wasn't prominent enough. Well, after further investigations, we traced the source of the problem back to one word: check-in. Check-in closes 30 minutes before departure. What we were trying to say there, what we had meant by check-in, was ticket gates. We were saying ticket gates close 30 minutes before departure. But for people like Claire, she had interpreted it completely differently. She had checked in online when she got her ticket. She checked in online to get her ticket, so she didn't need to turn up 30 minutes before. She could just turn up whenever she wanted. And so we knew that this word check-in was ambiguous, and we needed to be much more proactive and literal with that word. And also, 30 minutes before departure is really pushing it. If you turn up 30 minutes and 1 second, you will miss the train. And so we landed on the following: please arrive. Please arrive, much more clear and directional. Between 45 and 60 minutes before departure, a much more realistic time frame. And also, we're saying to people, you don't have to think, you don't have to time it, you just need to get there in that time bracket. So just taking the thinking away from the passenger. And then, where this message appears, where there's more space available, we will give the extra bit of information, which is the reason. The ticket gates close 30 minutes before departure because of security and passport control. And so, this message, this check-in message, was everywhere. It was on the website, it was on the signage at the station, it was on the app. And so what we wanted to do firstly was just target the most highly visible areas where this message would appear, the places where people were going for the information. And so we wanted to understand where people go for timings. The first place that people will go, no surprises, is the ticket itself, closely followed by the confirmation email. People will go back into their confirmation email to get that information. And so we rolled this message out, and the first place we rolled it was in the app. And this is it, residing in the top of the app ticket. And the impact was coming through pretty immediately. Less people were missing their trains. There were shorter queues at the ticket office with frustrated people having to buy last-minute train tickets to get on the next train. And we're also seeing that the flow, the traffic flow at the station was much smoother because of the time bracket. And so this was an absolute win-win for both the passengers and the station staff. And now check-in is like a swear word across the business. But what this brought to life was how critical words are to the UX. And this can be so easily overlooked. When consideration is not put into words, it can break the experience. But when careful consideration is put into clarity and conversational tone, it can really make it. And we made another change to the app ticket, but this time the impact was completely unexpected. We have 3 travel classes: standard, standard premier, and on the far right, business premier. And in the premier classes, you can get a meal served at your seat. And in the business premier class, you can get access to the business lounge, as well as other benefits. And what we wanted to do was introduce the colour associated with each travel class into the app ticket to help with easy recognition for the passengers. But it also helped the station staff in ways we hadn't expected. Firstly, entrance to the business lounge. Passengers could just quickly flash their phone and the staff could recognise the colour, know that they're eligible to go in and wave them through. And during peak times and the rush hour, there can be quite a big queue going into the business lounge. So that is now starting to run more smoothly. And secondly, on the platform itself, we have station staff lined up on the platform, welcoming people onto the carriages and making sure that they're getting into the right carriage according to what class they're in. Now the passengers just need to wave the app ticket, they recognise the colour and let them on. And there used to be bottlenecks around these doors, but now they're going much more smoothly. And so just by changing colours, we had reduced waiting times in a way we hadn't expected. And this was so much better for the passengers, even better for the station staff. And now moving on to the train itself and the seating experience. The UX team had a great opportunity to redesign the seat map last year. This is the old seat map that sat in the Eurostar before last year. And we knew it was difficult to use, it wasn't responsive, you couldn't use it on your mobile. So we redesigned this seat map from the ground up. And here is the main carcass of the seat map. And it serves all the user cases that you would expect that you would see in an airline. You can select your passenger, you can select your corresponding seat, and make sure that you're sitting together. And you can also change from one carriage to the next via the vertical stack on the left-hand side. And we user tested this to iron out any nuances in the interaction. But then we asked ourselves, is there anything that we can fold into this baseline design that could help passengers? Is there any way that we can prime people in any way before travelling? What are the untapped opportunities? And what data do we have to work with? So we went on an exploratory mission to find out. We boarded the 7:55 train from London to Paris. And we observed the station staff and the train managers as they welcomed people onto the trains and helped them to their seats. We walked the length of the train, witnessing conversations and seeing what was happening between the passengers as they boarded. And this was a great train to go on, the 7:55, because it had a whole range of user groups. It had the business traveller going to their first meeting of the day. It had the day tripper. And it also had the expats and leisure passengers going away for the weekend. So what came up? What came up is that where you sit is really important for a variety of reasons. Firstly, for the time-pressed passenger, sitting right at the front of the train is really important so they can make a sharp exit at the other end and be on their way. But also, for parents with babies, we witnessed parents walking up and down the length of the train looking for baby changing facilities, of which there are 2 within a train of 18 carriages. But also, the position of the seat itself. People like to look out of the window. And what was happening was, there were many people getting on the train expecting to get a view, see Paris come into view, for instance, and they had a blocked view. And that was causing a lot of disappointment and a lot of stress and conversation with the passengers and the station staff. And equally, there were people expecting to sit forward when they were actually sitting backwards. So we took these problems and we started to think about how we could bring these into this design, into this kind of baseline design that we had. And so the first thing that we did we really wanted to accentuate the direction of travel, so people could really see how far ahead they are on the train. And so we added the label forward, and we added some graphical enhancement to the nose of the train. Secondly, we added the baby changing icon to the 2 carriages where you have those facilities, so that parents could make an informed decision about where to sit. And thirdly, when you select your seat, an information panel will appear. It will appear from mobile across the desktop appropriately, with the critical information that we had learned. If you have a blocked view, we will tell you. If you have a full view, we'll also tell you. And if you're sitting forwards or backwards, we will inform you of that. And we also brought in some extra information that we'd learned was important, such as USB charging. And so, we launched this seat map. And then about 2 months later, we spoke to the station staff. And we asked them what's happening. We wanted to see what had happened since we'd launched the seat map. And their reaction was quite interesting. It really reminded me of, you know, when you have an injury and you need to go to a physio and you have about 7 sessions. And then about 2 months later, a friend will say to you, "How's that injury?" And you'd kind of just slowly forgotten that you'd ever had one. And that was happening here. They'd kind of just slowly forgotten that they were ever issues. But at the time, they were big issues. So from a UX designer's perspective, that was impact. We'd made these small changes and we'd seen the effect play out in the real world. So what this showed us is just how adding labels and icons can really make a difference. We had layered in these high-valued nuggets into the seat plan, and it had transformed the seating experience. And this was achieved as a direct result of a UX designer going to Paris and back in 1 day. Now, if I was just to pan out a little bit and look at the type of impact that we were creating, there is a pattern forming. And that is that we were designing to preempt and dispel one particular emotion: anxiety. Anxiety of different degrees at different points in the timeline. What do I need to know? What do I need to know about this journey? What do I need to know that I don't know? Do I have enough time? Do I have enough time to get to the station? Do I have enough time to go through into the business lounge? And that all-important question, will I sit forward? But anxiety is applicable to any product transaction. Is this product going to be what I expect? Is it going to turn up when I want it to? Or if I'm moving from one subscription service to the next, am I going to be missing out on anything? But when you dispel of anxiety, you then in turn get people to trust the product. Designing to elicit trust is so important, and it can be achieved on that micro level. And that's where we're redefining tech. We're humanizing it. We are there on the other side of the screen, emulating a helpful human who understands you and your needs. We're not just words on a screen or buttons to press. We're there creating trust and being the most human voice that we can. People aren't just viewing our site or any site in a vacuum. They're making decisions about whether they trust us based on their experiences with others. But when you do get trust, people then in turn relax. John Mader, who wrote The Laws of Simplicity, really encapsulated this when he said, "You can only truly relax when you know you are in the finest hands and treated with the best intentions." He talks about designing to relax as a key pillar of design. In fact, he calls it the key to designing to almost imagine that people are leaning back, they're so relaxed. It's like the ultimate desired state. But I would take that one step further. And I would say, when you dispel of anxiety and you create trust and you enable people to relax, you're also creating a positive memory. And that is extremely powerful. Because when you create a positive memory, people will come back again and again. And so looking out for these small changes, high impact opportunity, really reminds me of being in a video game. It's like you're on your mission to get to where you need to get to, dodging the hurdles. But can you just look out and reach up for those gold coins? Because when you grab them, your point tally will go up. And we're looking into all sorts of sources for our insights. We talk to the live chat team, customer service, call centre, as well as frontline staff. So my big question to you is the same big question that we're always asking ourselves at Eurostar. Where can you get impact? Where are those small opportunities that can make a real difference? And as we're moving through 2018, we're looking at those micro moments at the station and how we can use the app and geofencing to sign people to the platform and to the departure lounge. But talking of big questions, the biggest question that we get asked at Eurostar before people board the train is, will I see the fish? And the answer is yes. Take a look. And this is an innovation of our time, a VR expedition under the sea. We've come a long way since Napoleon. Thanks. So I have 2 VR headsets that I can give away to the 2 people that asked the first questions, and you can demo these on YouTube. So I'm taking questions.
So it's a big motivation to ask the question.
How do you get buy-in from people within Eurostar to take the time to talk to all of these people? Because it sounds like you're talking to a lot of people, and that's, I assume, time that they're getting paid for. So that's something where, how do you sell the company on what the benefit is of taking that time?
It's a great question. We started small. So what we did is we started by just having 5 user conversations in the office and just making that time frame quite lean. But at the same time, we had stakeholders sitting in the corner of the room observing the conversation. Because when stakeholders actually listen to the conversations, they start to realize the blind spots that existed within the company. And so it was very much seeing is believing. And then as soon as we started to make small changes and the impact was coming through, the buy-in got momentum.
I guess this is more of a general question, but I was wondering if there was anything else, like you were mentioning words and colors, anything else that maybe didn't make it in this presentation that might be interesting to talk about.
Wow. There's a ton of stuff. Like, I've brought through a few examples. Yeah, okay, I'll give you one example. We spent a short amount of time talking to wheelchair passengers because we wanted to get their booking path right. And we came up with some really interesting information that they were anxious about. Like, they wanted to know whether a ramp would be deployed. And before, they used to call up the call center to make sure that the ramp was deployed. Now, we actually make that like a headline. Don't worry, you just need to get there at a certain time, a ramp will be deployed, we have it in hand. So we did like 5 conversations with wheelchair passengers. We brought these insights into their booking path, and we're seeing conversations go down. So again, it's a kind of another one where we were reducing anxiety, but just by very, very simple steps.
Super interesting, and actually, it's true that small things, when we can really find the small things that make big impact, big changes, it's great. But how we can be sure that this little small changes will really, little small improvement will really change the whole service? Because as a designer, I'm making a lot of research, and then okay, I identified, for example, pain points. I'm sure that this is five biggest pain points that we should work on it. But how to be sure that say, okay, this solution will really work? Because it's like big responsibility. We have to, I don't know, put money on and budget and everything. So how to, I don't know, test it before? Or
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, there's a few parts to the answer of that question, but one of the things that we will always do is put any of our insights against a value versus effort matrix, so that we can at least identify the ones that are going to potentially have the most perceived value with the least amount of effort. So if something doesn't work, there's been small effort. So we will do that. But I think research will help if we like qualitative conversations as well as tracking to see the impact. But in terms of direction, if we're getting patterns through the research that something's not working, if, for instance, we're getting calls every week from wheelchair passengers wanting to know about ramps, are they being deployed, then when we put that in, and then we can, and that is very low effort, which it's information, we can see. So I think we do take time to make sure that we're not wasting our time on big things. So we'll go through the right processes, and one of them will be a value versus effort matrix.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
All your perspective here was coming from the UK, which I imagine is there another group of people who work in Paris or Brussels or wherever that have a different orientation? And culturally, is there like a different approach to how people do the UX design from the other side?
Yeah, that's interesting. So yes, a lot of this research that I've shown you here has been UK based, but what we're doing more and more of is spending time in the French station and the Belgium station as well, because you're absolutely right. Not everything is the same. We have other issues going on, so a lot of Belgian passengers won't travel necessarily with their passports, they'll travel with their ID cards, so they can't use the fast track queue. So we have other things going on as well in those stations. So yeah, we do make inroads in those areas, but yes, I did, this was very UK centric, yes.
Hi, those cases are really interesting, and it's nice to see the final output. But I'm thinking about the design process once you got to learn about the pain points and also map them, the value versus the effort. But how did you iterate on those? How can you tell us a bit more about that?
Okay. So with the examples I showed you, they were part of a wider product. So we have fortnightly sprints. We have a range of different Scrum methodologies, but some of the things that we will do, if we find something that's just not working, we will move it through the pipeline as quickly as possible, especially if there's low or minimal effort involved. It will make its way into a ticket and be out the door. There are some things that will sit in a backlog and they will just be prioritized like everything else. But what we're quite fortunate about is that we don't have layers and layers of sign-off at Eurostar. So we're quite contained. We're quite a small unit. And I think that is a benefit to us because it means that we can move things along quickly.
I actually have two questions. First is regarding the mobile application that you mentioned. It seems that there's a lot of information that the passengers need to know to take decisions or just to be informed about their journey. So how do you balance the need to give them a lot of information with the small amount of space on the phone that you may have to deal with? And this was one question. And the other one I forgot. I probably need to think about it.
Okay, so also, yes, I mean, that's a conversation that we have a lot, is like, how do you prioritize the information and where are people the most receptive to different contents? And again, that we try and make sure that we glean that from the user interviews. So we learn, for instance, that people are thinking about what time to get to the station the day before, and they're organising their ticket the day before. So we've got that in line of vision at that point. So it is really important to make sure that people are receptive at the right time. It's something that we continue to do, but yes, we absolutely pay attention to that because otherwise it could just be white noise on a tiny screen. So yeah, it is important. Thanks for bringing that up. Cool.
I really enjoyed the idea that you're kind of designing for trust and removing anxiety. Now, part of like my interaction with a service like this will be trusting you as a service provider that that I've got everything I need, and part of it will be trusting myself to have prepared correctly. So do you kind of think about the difference between like advising and empowering or supporting and empowering, and does that kind of change across cultures or across like different parts of the interaction?
Yeah, so I think I'll take part of that question, which is the preparation side. We will be proactive with that through travel emails. So we actually send an email out to people with a checklist of what they need to think about. What we're doing increasingly so, though, is being more personalised and more targeted with the communication, which actually partly answers the question from the person before as well. We don't want to just tell everyone to bring their passport or not their ID card because it's not relevant to everyone. So we'll try and be much more targeted. We are being more targeted with the emails as well, and those emails also comprise of preparation content. So we know that that's the place that people will see and respond to that kind of notification. Cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And for the people that got their headsets, come and help yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.